The Great Hall of the Valoran Empire stretched for nearly a mile. Its walls were made of black crystal that absorbed light rather than reflected it. Thousands of nobles stood in perfect rows, their silver skin gleaming under the pale blue flames that floated near the ceiling. They had gathered to witness the coming-of-age ceremony of Princess Yuna, third daughter of Emperor Draven. Yuna walked down the central path. Her heart beat fast inside her chest. She wore the traditional white gown of unmarked royalty, and her long dark hair fell past her shoulders. Unlike other Valyrians whose eyes were cold and gray, hers held warmth. This was her problem. This was why the whispers had followed her since childhood. She reached the throne where her father sat. Emperor Draven was tall and terrifying. His face showed no emotion. As he looked down at his daughter, beside him stood Yuna's mother, Empress Vel, and her two older sisters. None of them smiled Neil. The Emperor commanded Yuna knelt on the cold floor. She had waited 20 cycles for this moment. Today she would receive her imperial crest and take her place among the ruling family. Today she would finally belong. The Emperor rose from his throne. He held a small box made of red metal. Inside was the crest that would be burned into her palm, marking her as true Valoran royalty. Yuna lifted her hand, ready to accept the pain that came with honor. But her father did not open the box. "I have watched you for 20 cycles," he said. His voice echoed through the silent hall. "I have seen the way you look at lesser species. I have heard the questions you ask about our conquests. I have noticed how you flinch when prisoners are executed." Yuna's blood turned cold. She wanted to speak, to defend herself, but her throat would not work. "You are defective," the Emperor continued. "There is a mutation in your blood that makes you feel what others feel. You possess something the lesser races call compassion. It is a disease and it has no cure." The noblest began to whisper. Yuna heard words like shame and weakness floating through the crowd. She looked at her mother, hoping for support. But the Empress turned her face away. "You are not fit to wear the crest of our house." The Emperor declared, "You are not fit to rule. You are not fit to remain among us." Guards appeared on either side of Yuna. They grabbed her arms and pulled her to her feet. She struggled, but the Lauren guards were trained. "From birth to be strong, father, please." She begged. "I can change. I can be better." The Emperor looked at her with something close to disgust. "You cannot change what you are. Take her to the exile ship. Send her to the fringe territories where the garbage of the galaxy belongs." Yuna screamed as the guards dragged her away. She called for her mother, her sisters, anyone who might help. No one moved, no one spoke. They simply watched as she was removed from the Great Hall like a piece of broken equipment. The exile ship was small and old. It had been used many times before to transport those who had disappointed the Empire. Yuna sat alone in a dark room with metal walls. Her white gown was torn from the struggle. Her wrists were bruised from the guard's grip. She did not cry. The Valons were taught from birth that crying was the ultimate weakness. But inside something had broken. Everything she had ever known was gone. Her family had thrown her away like she was nothing. The ship traveled for many days. Yuna lost track of time in the darkness. She was given water but very little food. The guards did not speak to her. To them, she had already stopped existing. On the 5th day, something went wrong. The ship shook violently, and red warning lights filled the room. Yuna heard explosions somewhere in the distance. The guards shouted orders at each other, but their voices were filled with panic. Then came the crash. Yuna woke up surrounded by broken metal and smoke. Her body ached everywhere. Blood ran down her face from a cut on her forehead. She pushed herself up slowly and looked around. The ship had split in half. She could see a strange gray sky through the torn walls. She crawled out of the wreckage and fell on the rocky ground. The air was thin and cold. The landscape around her was nothing but gray rocks and dust in the distance. She could see mountains that looked sharp enough to cut the sky. This was Kurth 7, a moon in the Fringe Territories. She knew about this place. It was where the Empire sent those they wanted to forget. Few survived here for long. Yuna tried to walk, but her legs gave out. She had lost too much blood. Her vision was becoming dark around the edges. She thought about her father's words, defective, diseased. Perhaps he was right. Perhaps it would be better if she simply closed her eyes and let the cold take her. She was about to give up when she heard voices. They were speaking a language she did not recognize. At first, then her translator implant caught up. And she understood, there's someone alive over here. Careful check for weapons. It's a Valorant, a female. Yuna forced her eyes open. She saw figures approaching through the dust. They were shorter than Valorous and had strange, soft skin in various shades of brown and pink. Their eyes held colors she had never seen before in living beings. Blue. Green-brown humans. She had learned about them in her studies. They were a young species from a small planet called Earth. The Empire considered them barely worth noticing. They had no special abilities, no advanced technology, no psychic powers. They were, by all measures, completely ordinary. One of the humans knelt beside her. He was older than the others, with gray in his dark hair and scars on his face. His eyes were brown and deep, like looking into warm earth. She's hurt bad, he said. We need to get her to medical. Commander Taiho, another human, spoke. That's a Valoran. They enslaved 3 of our colony worlds. They killed thousands of our people. The older human, Taiho, looked at Yuna. She waited for the hatred. She waited for him to leave her to die, or perhaps kill her himself. It was what any Valoran would do to an enemy. But Taiho simply nodded and said, I know what they did, but she's not holding a weapon. She's holding her wounds. There's a difference, sir. She could be a spy, then we'll find out later. Right now, she's a dying person. And we don't let people die on our watch. He turned to the others. Carry her gently. Tell Jisoo to prepare the medical bay. Strong hands lifted Yuna from the ground. The movement sent pain through her entire body. But she did not cry out. She was too confused to feel pain properly. Why were they helping her? What did they want from her? Taiho walked beside the humans who carried her. He noticed her eyes were open, and watching him rest, he said. His voice was firm but not cruel. You're safe now, safe. Yuna did not understand the word. She had never been safe even in the Imperial Palace. She had always been watching, waiting, trying to hide who she really was. As her eyes closed, she had one thought that surprised her. Maybe dying among strange aliens would be better than living among her own people. She did not know yet how wrong she was about dying. And she did not know how much this scarred human commander would change everything she believed about strength, weakness, and what it truly meant to belong. Yuna woke up in a white room. The ceiling above her was made of simple metal, not the dark crystal of Valorant architecture. Soft lights glowed from panels in the walls. She heard a gentle beeping sound nearby and realized it was measuring her heartbeat. She tried to sit up, but pain shot through her chest. She gasped and fell back onto the bed. Easy there, a voice said. You broke 3 ribs and lost a lot of blood. Moving fast is not a good idea. Yuna turned her head. A young human female sat on a chair beside her bed. She had short black hair and a round, friendly face. She wore simple gray clothes, with a white symbol on the chest that Yuna did not recognize. My name is Jisoo, the human said. I'm the medic here. Well, one of them were a small colony. So everyone does many jobs? She smiled. You've been sleeping for 4 days. We weren't sure you would wake up. Eunice's throat was dry. She tried to speak, but only managed a rough sound. Jisoo quickly brought a cup of water. She helped Yuna drink slowly. The water tasted strange but good. It was not recycled like the water on Valorant ships. It tasted alive somehow. Why? Yuna finally managed to ask. Why did you help me? I am Valorn, your enemy. Jisoo put the cup down and thought about the question. She did not seem angry or afraid. She seemed curious. Commander Taiho says, we don't become better than our enemies by acting like them. Jisoo said, you were hurt. You needed help, that's enough reason. Yuna did not understand this logic. In the Empire, helping an enemy was considered treason. It showed weakness, and weakness was punished by death. Yet these humans had risked their resources and time to save someone who belonged to the species that had conquered their worlds. Over the following weeks, Yuna slowly recovered. Jisoo visited every day to check her wounds and change her bandages. The young medic asked many questions about Valorum. Biology, she was fascinated by how Yuna's silver blood carried oxygen differently than human. Red blood. She wanted to know why Valorant bones were denser, why their healing was slower but more complete. At first, Yuna answered carefully. She gave only basic information, always watching for signs that she was being interrogated for military secrets. But Jisoo never asked about weapons or fleet positions. She only asked about biology and medicine, always writing notes to help future patients. We've never treated a Valorum before, Jisoo admitted one day. Everything we know about your species comes from old databases and battle reports. Having a real person to learn from is much better. A real person, the word struck Yuna deeply. In the Empire, she had been called defective. Here she was simply a person. Commander Taiho visited her each evening. After his duties were finished, he never stayed long, but his visits became something Yuna found herself waiting for. He would bring food from the colony's kitchen and sit quietly while she ate. One night he brought something called soup. It was warm liquid with soft vegetables floating in it. Yuna had never tasted anything like it. The Larn food was designed for efficiency, not pleasure. This soup made her feel warm inside, in a way she could not explain. What is this place? She asked Taiho as she ate. Kara 7 colony, he replied. We came here about 15 years ago. Refugees mostly. People who had nowhere else to go. He looked around the small medical room. It's not much, but it's ours. How many humans live here? About 800 now. We've grown since the beginning. He paused. We also have some non-humans. Anyone who needs a home can find one here. Yuna put down her spoon. You taking anyone? Even species the Empire has conquered. Especially them, we understand what it's like to be considered worthless by those in power. Tio's eyes met hers. I'm guessing you understand that. Too, Yuna looked away. She did not want him to see the emotion in her eyes. My father called me defective. He said I have a mutation that makes me feel too much. He exiled me because I questioned why we destroy weaker species. Taya was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, on Earth, we have a saying, the people who question cruelty aren't defective. They're the ones keeping everyone else honest. Your people have such sayings. We have thousands of them. Humans love making meaning out of suffering. He smiled slightly. It changed his scarred face, making it almost gentle. Maybe that's our real talent. Not strength or speed or technology. Just a stubborn need to find hope, even when there isn't any. When Yuna was strong enough to walk, she expected everything to change. She assumed they had only been kind because she was helpless now that she could move again. Surely they would imprison her, or demand something in return. Taiho met her in the medical bay. He helped her stand and walked with her slowly down the corridor. Other humans passed them. Some looked at her with curiosity. A few looked afraid, but no one tried to hurt her or insult her. They reached a small room with a window, looking out at the gray landscape of the moon. In the distance, Yuna could see the colony's main buildings, simple structures made of metal and stone. "This can be your room if you want it," Dio said, "or you can leave." "Your choice." Yuna stared at him. "My choice. You're not a prisoner, you never were. If you want to take a transport to another system, we can arrange that. If you want to stay and help build this place, you can do that too." He shrugged. "Your life is yours. That's how we do things here in the Valorant Empire." No one had choices. Everyone served the will of the Emperor, from the lowest worker to the highest noble. The idea that her life could be hers was so foreign that Yuna did not know how to respond. "Why would you let me stay?" she asked. "I could be dangerous. I could betray you to my people." Taiho leaned against the wall and crossed his arms. "Could you after your father threw you away like garbage? After your whole family turned their backs on you?" Yuna flinched. The words were harsh, but they were true. "I've seen many broken people come through here." Taiho continued. "Humans, aliens, all kinds. The ones who want to cause harm. You can see it in their eyes. They're looking for weakness to exploit. But you," he studied her face, "you're looking for something else. I'm not sure what, maybe you don't know either." Yuna thought about his words. What was she looking for? She had spent her whole life trying to fit into a world that saw her compassion as a disease. Now she was free of that world, but she had no idea who she was without it. "I don't want to leave," she said finally. "I have nowhere to go, then stay." Taiho pushed himself off the wall. "Get some rest tonight. Tomorrow we'll find you something useful to do. Everyone here works, even grumpy old commanders like me." He walked toward the door, then stopped and looked back at her. "For what it's worth," he said, "I don't think you're defective. I think you're exactly what you're supposed to be. The Empire just wasn't ready for someone like you." He left before she could respond. That night, Yuna sat by her window and watched the stars. For the first time since her exile, she did not wish for death. She was still broken, still lost, still uncertain about everything. But somewhere deep inside, in a place she had kept hidden all her life, a small light began to glow. It felt strange and unfamiliar. Later, she would learn that humans had a word for it: hope. 3 months passed on Kreese 7, and Yuna discovered what it meant to belong somewhere. She began working in the engineering section with a man named Dohan. He was older than most of the colonists, with thick hands covered in scars from years of repair work. At first, he watched her with suspicious eyes. The way he saw how quickly she learned to fix broken machines, his attitude changed. "You're good with your hands," he said one day while they repaired a water recycler. "Better than most humans I've trained. The Lawrence are taught many skills from childhood." Yuna replied, "We never know what abilities the Empire might require from us." Dohan laughed. It was a rough sound, like rocks grinding together. "The Empire taught you to fix machines. I thought they only taught you to break things." Yuna smiled. 3 months ago, such a joke would have offended her. Now she understood that Dohan meant no harm. This was simply how humans showed affection, by teasing each other. She also continued helping in the medical bay. Jisoo had become her closest friend, teaching her about human medicine while learning Valorant biology in return. Together they created new treatments that worked for both species. "You should have been a healer," Jisoo told her one evening. "You have gentle hands in the Empire." Healers are considered lesser servants. Yuna said only warriors and rulers are respected. Jijo shook her head. Humans respect those who save lives, just as much as those who take them. Sometimes more. The children of the colony had been afraid of Yuna. At first, her silver skin and unusual eyes made her look like the monsters from their parents' stories. But children are curious by nature, and soon they began approaching her with questions. "Are you really from space?" a little girl named Hannah asked one day. "Yes, you know," replied very far away in space. "Do you miss your home?" Yuna thought about the cold halls of the Imperial Palace. She thought about her mother turning away from her. She thought about her father's disgusted face. "No," she said honestly, "this is my home now." Hannah smiled brightly. "Good. Because I made you something." She handed Yuna a small drawing on rough paper. It showed two figures holding hands. One was silver with long hair. The other was small with brown skin. "That's us," Hannah explained, "friends." Yuna's eyes burned with tears. She had been taught never to shed. She took the drawing carefully and pressed it to her chest. "Thank you," she whispered. "I will treasure this always." Commander Tai-Ho watched these changes from a distance. He saw how the colonists gradually accepted Yuna. He saw how she worked hard at every task, without complaint. He saw how she treated everyone with the same kindness, from the youngest child to the oldest worker. One night, as they walked together under the stars, he finally asked a question that had been in his mind for weeks. "Do you ever regret not fighting back when your father exiled you?" Yuna considered the question carefully. "At first I thought I should have fought. I should have argued, proving myself worthy somehow. But now, I understand that I could never have been worthy. In his eyes, what he saw as weakness is simply who I am." And who is that someone who feels things deeply? Someone who cannot watch suffering without wanting to stop it. Someone who believes that strength should protect, not destroy. She looked at Tai-Ho. Someone more like humans than Valorant, perhaps. Tio nodded slowly. "You know, when I first saw you in that wreckage, I almost walked away. Part of me wanted to let you die. My parents were killed in the Valorant invasion of Colony 3. I had every reason to hate your kind." Yuna stopped walking. "Then why didn't you?" "Because hate is heavy. I carried it for years. And it nearly destroyed me." He touched one of the scars on his face. "I got these fighting Valorants during the Frontier Wars. I was so angry that I stopped caring about my own survival. Almost got killed a dozen times, because all I wanted was revenge. What changed? I realized that revenge doesn't bring anyone back. It just turns you into the thing you hate." He looked up at the stars. "So I decided to build something instead of destroy. This colony, these people, this life, it's my answer to all that pain. Proving that we can be better than those who hurt us." Yuna felt something shift in her chest. Understanding, perhaps, or recognition. She had found someone who knew what it meant to choose kindness, when anger would be easier. The alarm came 3 days later. Yuna was in the engineering bay with Duhan when red lights began flashing and sirens filled the air. She had never heard that sound before, but she understood its meaning immediately. "What's happening?" Duhan shouted. A voice came through the speakers. "All personnel to defensive positions. Incoming fleet detected. This is not a drill." "Repeat, this is not a drill." They ran to the command center. Colonists were rushing through the quarters, some carrying weapons, others helping children and elderly to shelter areas. There was fear in their eyes, but also determination. No one was screaming or panicking. They had trained for this. Tai-Ho stood at the central console, his face grim. Around him, officers reported information in quick, professional voices. 30 ships. Someone said the Lauren configuration. Imperial markings. Yuna's blood turned to ice. She pushed through the crowd to reach Tai-Ho. "Let me see the transmission records," she demanded. Tai-Ho nodded to an officer, who brought up the data on a screen. Yuna studied the ship patterns and formation codes. Her heart sank deeper with each passing second. "That's the Emperor's personal fleet," she said quietly. "My father is here." The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at her. "He's not here for me," Yuna continued. Her voice was hollow. "He's here to destroy this colony. My exile was just an excuse to mobilize his armada. He's been planning to eliminate the human presence in the fringe territories for years." "How do you know?" Tai-Ho asked. "Because I heard him discuss it once. Years ago, he considers humans a potential threat to imperial expansion. Not because of your technology or military power, but because of your ideas." She met Tai-Ho's eyes. "Freedom choice. Compassion for strangers, these concepts are dangerous. To an empire built on obedience, don't one step forward, we have one ship. The Harang. She's old and her weapons are outdated. Against 30 Imperial cruisers." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Yuna watch the humans around her. She expected panic, despair. The kind of fear that made people abandon their posts and flee. That was what Valerians would do when facing impossible odds. Survival was the highest law. But the humans didn't run. Tai-Ho straightened his back and looked at his people. When he spoke, his voice was steady as stone. "We always knew this day might come. We built this colony, knowing the Empire considered us insects to be crushed. We built it anyway, because some things are worth dying for." He paused. "I'm not going to order anyone to fight. This isn't a military base. You're free people with families and futures. If you want to evacuate, the transport ships are ready." No one moved toward the door. "But if you want to stay," Tai-Ho continued, "if you want to stand beside me and show the Empire what humans are made of, then I promise you this, we will make them remember us. Whatever happens tomorrow, the galaxy will know that we did not kneel." One by one, the colonists raised their fists. "We don't kneel," they said together. The one raised his fist, Jizu raised hers. Even old men and young teenagers raised their fists. Yuna stood frozen. She was watching something impossible. 800 people facing certain death, and not one of them chose to run. Tai-Ho turned to her. "You don't have to stay. This isn't your fight." Yuna thought about the little girl, Hannah, who gave her a drawing. She thought about Jisoo, who taught her to heal instead of harm. She thought about Du-Won, who treated her like a colleague instead of an enemy. She raised her fist. "Yes, it is," she said. "This is exactly my fight." Tai-Ho smiled. It was a warrior's smile, fierce and proud. "Then let's show your father what happens when he threatens our family." The Valoran Empire had conquered 47 star systems. Their fleets had never lost a major battle. Their soldiers were trained from birth to be perfect weapons of destruction. They believed themselves to be the supreme beings of the galaxy, and for centuries, no one had proven them wrong. Commander Tai-Ho did not plan to prove them wrong through strength. He planned to prove them wrong through stubbornness. The night before the battle, he gathered his officers in the command center. Yuna sat among them, her knowledge of Valoran tactics making her essential to their planning. "We cannot win a direct fight." Tai-Ho said, "The Harang is a good ship, but she's alone against 30. If we try to meet them in open space, we die in minutes, then what do we do?" asked Captain Minji, a young woman who commanded the Harang. Tai-Ho brought up a map of the Kareth system. "On the main screen, we use what we have. 15 years of mining this region means we know every rock, every crater, every electromagnetic dead zone within 1,000,000 kilometers. The Empire knows none of it." He pointed to a dense asteroid field on the edge of the system. The harangue will draw their vanguard. Into this debris field, their sensors will be confused by the mineral content of the asteroids. Their formation will spread out as they try to navigate. And then the one asked, and then we hit them with everything else. Taiho switched to a different display, showing small dots scattered across the moon's surface. We've been building mining drones for years. 47 of them each carrying enough explosives to crack a cruiser's hull. We'll launch them from hidden positions, targeting their engines and weapon systems. Yuna studied the plan. It was clever. But it had problems. The Lauren shields will block most of your explosives. The drones are too slow to reach the ships. Before they're shot down, that's where you come in. Taiho said we need to know their shield frequencies and rotation cycles. Can you give us that? Yuna hesitated. Sharing Imperial military secrets was the highest form of treason. If her father ever captured her, she would face a death that lasted weeks. But then she thought about Hannah, hiding in a shelter somewhere below, clutching her drawings and wondering if she would survive the night. I can give you everything. Yuna said shield frequencies, communication code, standard response protocols. I can tell you exactly how Valorant commanders think, and how to make them react the way you want. Taiho nodded good. Then let's get to work. The battle began at dawn. The Valon fleet entered the Kareth system. In perfect formation, 30 ships moving as one, like a beautiful and deadly dance. Emperor Draven watched from his command ship, expecting quick victory. The human colony had no real defenses. This would be simple extermination. Then the harangue appeared. Captain Minji flew the old ship directly at the Imperial fleet, firing every weapon she had. The shots did no real damage, just sparks against mighty shields, but it drew attention. It was an insult. One ship against 30. Admiral Hayok, Raven's second-in-command, laughed. The humans truly are mad. Destroy it. The Emperor commanded, make it slow. Let them watch their only defender burn. 5 Valoran cruisers broke formation. To pursue the harangue, Minji was ready. She dove into the asteroid field, her ship dancing between massive rocks that would crush any vessel that moved too fast. The Valoran cruisers followed. They were faster and stronger, but their captains did not know this. Space sensors gave false readings. Navigation systems flickered. 2 ships collided with asteroids they didn't see coming. A third was caught in a gravitational pocket that pulled it into a spinning rock. On the ground, the colonists cheered. First blood belonged to humanity, but the Empire adapted quickly. Admiral Hyacinth recalled the remaining pursuit ships and ordered a bombardment of the asteroid field. If they couldn't catch the harangue, they would destroy everything around it. This was when Taiho launched his drones. 47 mining machines rose from hidden caves across Kref 7. They moved slowly, deliberately, their courses calculated, using the data Yuna had provided. They knew exactly when the Valon shields rotated, and exactly where the gaps appeared. The first drone struck a cruiser's engine section, and detonated. The explosion tore through 3 decks. Before anyone understood what had happened, a second drone hit the same ship's weapons array. A third finished it off in the Imperial command ship. Emperor Draven's calm expression finally cracked. What is this mining equipment? They're attacking us with mining equipment. More drones found their targets. 5 Valoran cruisers became 4. Then 3. The Imperial formations scattered as captains tried to protect themselves from attacks coming from every direction. But the Empire had overwhelming numbers. 25 ships remained, and they turned their fury on the moon itself. Bombardment began, massive energy beams striking the surface, destroying buildings and fortifications. Taiho watched the destruction from an underground command post. His face was grim but not defeated. Ground teams go across the moon. Small groups of colonists emerged from hidden tunnels. They carried weapons salvaged from old battlefields and bombs made from mining explosives. They attacked Valoran dropships as they landed, then vanished back into the tunnels before reinforcements could arrive. The Imperial soldiers were confused. They were trained to fight armies, not shadows. Every time they thought they had secured a position, humans appeared behind them. Every time they pursued the attackers, they found only empty caves and dead ends. It was in the middle of this chaos that Jisoo was captured. Yuna heard the news from a soldier, who stumbled into the command post, bleeding from a wound in his leg. A Valam patrol had found the medical shelter. They had taken everyone inside as prisoners. Taiho's face went pale. How many? 20 medical staff, 40 wounded. And Yesu the soldier's voice broke. Commander, I'm sorry. There were too many of them. A communication signal interrupted them. Admiral Hayok's face appeared on the screen. Humans, he said. Your resistance has been impressive, but it ends now. We have your healers. We have your wounded surrender immediately, or we will execute them one by one. Starting with this female, the image shifted to show Jisoo, her face bloodied but her eyes defiant. A Valorant soldier held a blade to her throat. Taiho stared at the screen. Yuna saw his hands shaking with rage. We have 3 hours to respond, Admiral Hayok continued after that. We begin the executions. The signal ended. Silence filled the command post. Everyone looked at Taiho, waiting for his decision, sir. An officer said quietly, if we surrender, they'll kill us all anyway. The Empire doesn't take prisoners. I know, Taiho said. His voice was barely a whisper. Then what do we do? Taiho was silent for a long moment. Then he looked at Yuna. You said you know the Lauren ship layouts. Do you know the standard prison deck configuration? Yuna understood immediately. You want to go in, I want to bring our people back. That's suicide. Their command ship has 1,000 soldiers. I know. Taiho checked his weapon. An old rifle he had carried since the Frontier Wars. I'm not asking anyone to come with me. This is my choice. Yuna stepped forward. It's my choice too. Taiho shook his head. You've done enough. You gave us information that saved hundreds of lives today. No one would blame you for staying. Jisoo is my friend. Yuna's voice was steady. She taught me to heal instead of harm. She saw me as a person when everyone else saw an enemy. I will not abandon her. Dohan moved to join them. I'm coming too. Then Ninji, who had somehow survived the asteroid battle, and returned to the surface. Count me in one by one. Colonists volunteered until Taiho had a team of 20. It was not enough to win a battle. It might be enough to create chaos. They approached the Imperial command ship using a captured Valoran shuttle. Yuna transmitted the proper codes in the docking bay. Doors opened. What followed was not a battle. It was a lesson the humans fought. Like nothing the Valerians had ever seen. They worked in perfect teams, covering each other, moving with desperate precision. When soldiers fell, others picked up their weapons and kept fighting. When paths were blocked, they found new routes. Yuna LED them through Carters. She remembered from her studies. Taiho fought beside her, his old rifle never stopping. Twice he was hit by Valoran plasma fire. Twice he stood up and kept moving. They found Jisoo in a holding cell, bloodied but alive when she saw Yuna and Taiho. She laughed through her split lips. Took you long enough, she said. Taiho smiled. His fierce warrior smile had to make a dramatic entrance. They fought their way back through 3 decks of Imperial soldiers. Taiho took 2 more plasma burns covering the retreat. He never complained. They reached the shuttle with seconds to spare. Behind them, explosions rocked the command ship. as Minji detonated charges she had planted during their escape. As they flew back toward the moon, Yuna looked at Taiho. He was pale from blood loss. "Barely conscious, you're insane." She told him. He managed a weak laugh. "That's the human way of war. Too stupid to know when we've lost. You didn't lose, not today." He closed his eyes. "Not ever. As long as one of us keeps fighting." The battle for Kara 7 lasted 7 days. 7 days of constant fighting, constant dying, constant refusing to surrender. The Valoran Empire threw everything they had at the small human colony, and the humans threw it right back. On the 8th morning, the Imperial fleet retreated. Emperor Draven did not give a reason. He did not acknowledge defeat. He simply ordered his remaining ships to leave the system and never speak of what had happened there. But the galaxy knew. Word spread through trade routes and refugee networks, through secret communications and whispered stories. A single human colony had faced the might of the Valoran Empire and survived. It should have been impossible. Everyone said so. The numbers didn't make sense. 800 colonists against the most powerful military force. In known space, it was a miracle. It was madness. It was human. Yuna stood in the wreckage of the colony's main square, surrounded by rubble and exhausted survivors. Buildings had been destroyed. Entire sections of the settlement were gone. Of the 800 colonists who had chosen to fight, nearly 200 had died, but the rest were alive. And they were free. Taiho sat on a broken wall nearby, his wounds wrapped in simple bandages. The medical bay had been destroyed, so Jisoo and her team worked in the open air, treating the injured with whatever supplies they had managed to save. "We won," the one said. He sounded like he didn't quite believe it. "We actually won for now." Taiho replied, "The Empire doesn't forget. They'll come back eventually. Let them." Minji spoke up. From where she was helping repair a generator, "We'll be ready." Yuna watched her friends. Her family worked together to rebuild. Humans carried wounded Valorants who had defected during the battle. Former enemies shared food and water. Children emerged from shelters and immediately began helping clear debris. This was what her father had feared. Not human weapons or technology, but this impossible ability to turn strangers into family, to find strength and compassion rather than cruelty. A communication signal interrupted the recovery work. Everyone tensed, expecting another threat. But it was not the Empire. This is the mining vessel Starfall, representing the independent coalition of the French. "We heard what you did at Karth 7. We're coming to help." Another signal followed. Then another. "This is the agricultural colony on Varus 3. We have medical supplies and doctors, and a route to your position. This is the refugee ship Eternal Hope. We carry 300 able-bodied workers. Permission to land by the end of the day." 17 ships had arrived at Karest 7. By the end of the week, the number had grown to 43. They came from every corner of the fringe territories. Species that had been enemies now working side by side. They came because they had heard about the humans, who didn't surrender. They came because hope is contagious. Emperor Draven sent a final transmission. Before cutting all communication with the fringe, his face appeared on every screen in the colony. Cold and furious. "By imperial decree, the creature once known as Princess Yuna is hereby marked for death. Any being who provides her shelter or aid will face the full wrath of the Valoran Empire. She's no longer my daughter. She's no longer Valorant. She is nothing." He paused and his eyes seemed to look directly at Yuna. "Through the screen, you will never be safe. Wherever you go, we will find you. Whatever you build, we will destroy. This is my promise." The transmission ended. Yuna stood frozen. She had expected this. but hearing the words spoken by her own father still hurt in ways she couldn't describe. She had been erased, cast out, not just from her family, but from her entire species. Dahuan walked past her, carrying a piece of the ruined command center. He stopped when he saw her face. "What's wrong?" he asked. "The death mark," she said. "The Emperor's promise if I stay here. I bring danger to everyone." The one laughed. The sound surprised her. "That's what you're worried about." He pointed to the wall of his engineering workshop. There, pinned to the metal, were dozens of documents and recordings. "That's our collection. Every threat the Empire has ever sent us. Every promise to destroy us. Every warning to surrender or die." Eunice stared at the wall. So many threats. So many reasons to be afraid. "We keep them as decoration." The one said, "Reminds us that words are cheap. Action is what matters." He pulled a pin from his pocket and handed it to her. "Here. Your death mark can join the collection. Welcome to the family." That night, Taiho found Yuna on the observation deck. She was watching the stars, just as she had done the first night after he had offered her a home. "How are your wounds?" she asked without turning around. "Healing. Jesus says I'll have new scars to add to my collection." He moved to stand beside her. "How are you?" Yuna considered the question. 3 months ago, she had been a broken exile, ready to die on a cold moon. Now she had fought in a war, helped save hundreds of lives, and been marked for death by her own father. "I should feel afraid," she said. "The Empire will never stop hunting me. Everyone who stays near me is in danger." And yet she turned to look at him. His scarred face was gentle in the starlight. "And yet I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. For the first time in my life. I'm not pretending, I'm not hiding who I am. I'm simply me." Taiho smiled. "That's the human way, well. Not just human anymore, that's the Griff 7 way. We don't run from who we are. We own it even when who we are makes us targets." Especially then. He reached out and took her hand. It was a human gesture. The Valyrians never performed physical contact. For comfort rather than combat. "You could have traded me for peace," Yuna said quietly when the Empire first arrived. "You could have sent me back. My father might have accepted that and left." No, Taiho shook his head. "He wouldn't have, we both know that. But even if he would have, I wouldn't have done it. Why? Because you're one of us now. That means something to humans?" He squeezed her hand gently. "You're not Valoran anymore. And you're not really human either. You're something new. Something the galaxy has never seen before." Yuna felt tears forming in her eyes. She didn't fight them this time. She let them fall, let herself feel the weight of everything she had been through, and everything that waited ahead. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Good. Being scared means you have something worth protecting." Tao looked out at the growing fleet of allied ships, orbiting the moon. "We all have something worth protecting now." Each other in the weeks that followed. The colony transformed. What had been a desperate settlement of 800 humans became the founding point of something larger. They called it the Fringe Coalition, an alliance of the forgotten and the discarded. Yuna took on a new role. She became the bridge between species, teaching them to understand each other the way she had learned to understand humans. Her compassion, once called a defect, became her greatest gift. Word spread further. More ships came. Former enemies became allies. Slaves who had escaped the Empire found safe harbor. Warriors tired of pointless conquest found new purpose, in building instead of destroying. 1 year after the battle, Yuna stood on the bridge of a new ship, called the New Harang, built by a dozen species working together. Beside her fleet, Commander Taiho surveyed their growing armada. "The Empire is requesting a ceasefire." Her communications officer reported, Yuna and Taiho exchanged glances. They both remembered a broken girl, crawling from wreckage ready to die. They both remembered a choice made in a moment of compassion. Tell them we're willing to talk, Yuna said, but only as equals. The days of the galaxy, kneeling to the Valoran Empire, are over. She was no longer a rejected princess. She was not a defect or a disease or a disgrace. She was Admiral Yuna of the French coalition. She was proof that kindness could change the galaxy. And beside her stood a human warrior, who had taught her the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to let cruelty win. Sometimes the bravest act is simply standing beside someone who needs you. Sometimes hope is a choice, and that choice can move stars. The galaxy was changing, a new dawn was rising. And it had begun with a simple act of mercy on a cold, forgotten moon, when a scarred human commander looked at his enemy and saw only a person who needed help. That was the human way. That was the beginning of everything.